Hello, my name is Melanie McComb. I'm a genealogist for the New England Historic Genealogical Society. I'm presenting to you Georgetown Memory Project, Preserving the Stories of the GU272. We're going to take you back to a time in 1838 when the GU272 has arisen from. At this time, Georgetown College, which later became Georgetown University, was experiencing crushing debt due to the number of construction and maintenance projects being completed. You can see an engraving on the left-hand side of what Georgetown College looked like. A decision was made by the Jesuits who run the college to sell off their most valuable assets, the enslaved persons that worked at the college and worked the nearby plantations and the farms. On June 19, 1838, the Jesuits signed a contract with two sugar plantation owners in Louisiana, Jesse Batty and Henry Johnson. This contract included the names of 272 enslaved persons, hence the 272, Georgetown University and 272, which was later put together a few years back when more information was being uncovered about this project, which we'll talk about a little later. The sale raised $115,000, which is equivalent to about $3.3 million today. In the Maryland Province Archives is the original Articles of Agreement that was being made between the Jesuits and the two plantation owners, in which they had named the 272 Negroes, to wit, each of the individuals by name, by sex, by age, and in some cases even relationships. So you may see little notices like this one, like Nellie, his daughter. But this information had to come from somewhere else in order to help fill out the official bill of sale. What happened was in early 1838, a census was conducted to compile a list of persons enslaved on the Jesuit plantations in Maryland. In this list, the enslaved persons are organized by plantation, along with their first name, their age, and occasionally some relationship notes, which was mostly used for indicating their children or spouse. Also in the Maryland Province Archives is the census of people to be sold in 1838, because it was a pre-sale census. And you can see each of the different plantations that have been noted here, such as White Marsh Farm, or St. Thomas's Manor, or Newtown, etc. So you could look down the names of the list and see each of the individuals. There were men, women, and children, yes, children, that were included in this sale and enumerated in this census here. And occasionally you will see notes such as Henry Kelly's daughter, 13, which helps give us an idea of who these individuals were. Now, the number is higher than 272 as previously thought. While this bill of sale had the 272, researchers were able to document that only 206 enslaved were sent to the Louisiana plantations. There were another 108, which brings the number up to 314 originally accounted for, that were part of the original sale who remained in Maryland or were sold elsewhere. This 108 group was known as the Lost Jesuit Slaves, and many of them had avoided the transport to Louisiana by escaping or because of an existing marriage. This was a bit of a loophole policy that the Jesuits followed, that if an enslaved had a marriage to a free person of color or someone in a nearby plantation, they would not separate the couple. They would not send one and then leave the other one behind. So because of that policy, there usually were other enslaved persons that were sent as a substitute instead, which is why the number is higher than we think. Many of the enslaved were transported on the Katherine Jackson vessel that you can see in this watercolor drawing done in 1844 on the right. The ship left Alexandria, Virginia on November 13, 1838, and arrived about 3 weeks later on December 6 in New Orleans. Now, an interesting fact is that Georgetown University officials claimed in 2014 that all the enslaved persons aboard the ship had perished of fever, and this was not true. The enslaved did make to their final destination, and the statement was proved false through the work of different researchers that would later form the Georgetown Memory Project. In the Katherine Jackson Manifest, which exists in the records of the U.S. Customs Service, Record Group 36 of the National Archives at Fort Worth, Texas, we see this manifest of Negroes, mulattoes, and persons of color on board the Katherine Jackson, in which we see each of the different names, their sex, their age, their height, whether they were a Negro, mulatto, or person of color on here. And again, as we saw earlier in that 1838 census, the sale included men, women, and children, such as you see a small child down here, a John Lewis, age 2 years old. The enslaved were split up among 3 different plantations in Louisiana. The West Oak Plantation in Iberville Parish on Bayou Maringouin was owned by Batty. The Maringouin Plantation and the Ascension Plantation in Ascension Parish were owned by Johnson. So now let's talk about the Georgetown Memory Project. This was formed by a group of alumni led by Richard Cellini, and this was at a time where many different universities were coming to terms with their involvement and having active slave labor before slavery was abolished. And there were rumors circulating throughout Georgetown University that there was indeed another sale happening there, and that they had heard about the enslaved going on the Katherine Jackson. He hired a team of genealogists to then trace the descendants of the Georgetown enslaved. And because we have those names from the 1838 census, as well as the bill of sale and the Pastor Manifest, we have enough information to look and create trees going forward. And one of the lead genealogists, Judy Raffel, has traced more than 200 of the slaves and has uncovered over 7,700 descendants, living and deceased. And of these 7,700, more than 4,000 descendants are alive today. And I'm sure there are others that have not been identified yet. On our website, GU272.AmericanAncestors.org, we have compiled different genealogies for each of these family groups to help give the descendants a piece of their family history back and to help bring some healing to this very awful time period in America. The genealogies of the GU272 were organized into 49 family groups, and we looked at the full 314 enslaved. The head of household was listed as the root person, so this was the person in which the genealogy and the descendants will then trace down from. All this information on the families can be found on our website, gu272.AmericanAncestors.org. And how we set this up is we used our Ancestries platform for each of the 49 families, which we'll show in a few moments here. And we've also included PDFs of family histories for 32 of the families that we have traced down to modern descendants. So if we go into our website, we can take a look at individual families. This is the Adams family, and there's a short biography that's given, starting with that root person, as well as their spouse and children, if known. Peter Adams was born in Maryland in 1807 and died after 1880, at least the age of 73 in Louisiana. So you see that migration happening. Peter married Nellie Hawkins, who was also enslaved on the White Marsh Farm plantation in Maryland, one of the plantations that we saw in the 1838 census. The Adams had one son, Cornelius, born in 1822, who likely passed away, and 3 daughters, Henrietta, Cecilia, and Rutha. The couple was sold to Henry Johnson in 1838. He was one of the sugar plantation owners. And both Nellie and Peter were transported to separate plantations away from their young children by 1844. So in this case, they didn't divide up the spouses, but they did separate them from their children, which was horrible and horrific. Henrietta had her first daughter, Mary Frances Ware, in 1843 at the age of 18, and with her husband, she had 6 more children, etc. So if we wanted to find out more about the Adams family, we can go in and click on the search database icon that shows up under each family. From here, if you have a very specific person that you are tracing within this family, you can put in their first name and their last name, or you could just keep it just to the last name just to see who has already been identified. And then from there, we click search. So here we see a listing of the 52 search results is Henrietta Adams, one of the daughters of Peter. And we see some abbreviated information in the search results showing that her birth is about 1825, that she was in the Peter Adams volume, group 43, and her parents are Peter Adams and Nellie Hawkins. If we click the link for her name, we can see more information about Henrietta. Now we start to see some of those PDF genealogies that we mentioned that were put together. So we start off with Peter. He is generation 1 and he is listed as the one in the Zonentafel format because he is the root person. So it shows Peter, Mary, and Nellie Hawkins, and here are their children. Here we also learn that Henrietta died February 27th, 1896 in Smoke Bend, Ascension Parish, Louisiana, and that she had married William Ware. If we wanted to see the individual family trees that were set up on our Ancestries platform, you could either scroll down to the bottom of the database that you're looking at to go into the individual tree, or you can go back to our website on GU272.AmericanAncestors.org and click Go to Family Tree under the family you're interested in. From here, when you're taken to the American Ancestries, you will then see the root person, which will be up at the very top, and it will list any spouses and children descending down. And we also see Henrietta here as well listed. So if we go back to Henrietta and we click on her, we can find out more information. So here we see her birth and death date that we've noted, and we noted here that also her parents as well as her children. Now, let's say you want to know what was the source of that death information. How do we know that that's accurate? So if we scroll down on our profile page, we see there is a listing from the Diocese of Baton Rouge Catholic Church Records, Volume 20. And here there was the burial listed the next day, February 28th, 1896, St. Francis of Assisi Catholic. And then it gives a little bit of a citation about those Catholic Church records. So this gives us a lot of great information in case you wanted to go and visit her grave, and also you have that source of knowing exactly that her death date was accurate. So anytime this information has been gathered through the process from all the research, we've incorporated them into the ancestries. Now, how can you find out your connection to the GU272 Memory Project? Because that's something I think that many of you are interested in if you have roots, especially in the South. So some key clues that we like to have you look at. If your family is Black, African American, or mixed race, that is one clue that you will want to have as a starting point. Second, if you note that any of your family is Roman Catholic, the Jesuits that ran Georgetown College and later Georgetown University are Catholic. So the religion does play a key factor because it's possible that descendants would still practice Catholicism later on, and that would have a big impact on finding additional records such as church records. Looking for historic ties to Maryland or southern Louisiana because geography is very key, noting that many of the enslaved were sent out to Louisiana if they were not sent out elsewhere. And specifically, there are these few parishes you should pay attention to. Iberville Parish, Ascension Parish, Terrebonne Parish, and or St. Landry Parish. So looking at those 4 different parishes will give you an idea if you think you might have a connection based on where we have found descendants. And then, of course, we can't discount the family lore. You may have heard of ancestors coming to Louisiana from Maryland, specifically Baltimore up north. Coming on the ship, the Katherine Jackson, maybe you just never really knew much about the ship and maybe what was the circumstances around it, or if you had heard stories about your ancestors being enslaved by Jesuits or the Catholic Church. All of these are different reasons why you'd want to look into finding out more about your possible GU272 connection. So how can you learn more? Well, on our website, GU272.AmericanAncestors.org, we have a master spreadsheet that is under the Finding the GU272 tab, and you can actually download this spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet actually is, what we're showing here is just a small depiction of what the full spreadsheet looks like. It actually goes on quite a number of columns off to the right. And as you can see here, we have listed the first name, their last name, their birth year, the group number, so those family group numbers we looked at, if they are the root person that the family is being based on, if they're appearing in that 1838 Jesuit slave census. That could be another thing to look into, is that if you wanted to see that, that helps maybe organize a little bit better on how you can find more about them. And because of that, you also will see the name of the plantation they originally were on. So as you can see, a lot of these individuals are included on the White Marsh Farm. And then it goes on to talk about their age at the census, any kinship ties to different people if they were noted on the census, and other identifiers, moving on to the sale agreements. So all this information is captured together and makes it very easy if you wanted to search the families to see if you notice anybody in your family that matches up with where you would expect to find them. We also have DNA studies being conducted, very much led by Judy Rafael, and she has used the website gedmatch.com, which is a third-party website where you can upload your results from Ancestry or 23andMe or MyHeritage, and this is a great way of getting in touch with other possible descendants and also getting in touch with Judy herself. So, and she's actually, there's a note here that says that the results are listed under her email address, but keep in mind that not all the kids that she manages are necessarily GU272 descendants. They may be related to her family. So, but it might be a great way to get in touch with her. If you do find that connection and you see her in your match list, you may want to reach out and see if she's already documented some information on your family. We also are always looking for more descendants to interview and to find out more information, because oral history is such a key resource for genealogy, for community history, American history, local history, because we need to preserve the stories and about these families, and to really understand and come to terms with all the different processes that have taken place. And I feel like through healing can start when we start to really talk about the very difficult histories that have happened. And slavery is very much a difficult topic to talk about in America, but it's something that we can start opening up more conversations between enslavers and enslaved descendants to hopefully bring more healing through this. So if you're interested in sharing an interview, we'd very much like you if you would get in touch with us using the email address on this slide. There are some other key resources if you'd like to learn more, such as the Georgetown Memory Project, which was led by Richard Cellini, so that original nonprofit that was founded. A lot of the different documents that we've shared are part of the Georgetown Slavery Archive, which includes items from the Provincial Archives of Maryland. There's also a GU272 Descendants Association, so you can get in touch with others if you've uncovered that you are related to one of the GU272, or the 314 we should say. This might be a great way to get in touch and to meet others. And then of course Georgetown University has obviously had to revise their policies, and they've created a working group on slavery, memory, and reconciliation. So if you'd like to learn more, their website is on here as well. These links are also included in the handout. Thank you for letting me share with you this presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to learn more about AmericanAncestors.org, please visit AmericanAncestors.org/education. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.